Welcome back to the Working Tools podcast, where today we're continuing with our discussion on Observing the Craft by Worshipful Brother Andrew Hammer.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Thank you for joining us again with the Working Tools podcast, where I'm joined by 3/4 of our hosts today. I have very worshipful brother David Colbeth from King Solomon's Lodge, number 60. Worshipful brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles Lodge, number 153. And I'm worshipful brother Jarrod Dunham from Meticton Lodge, number 147. And today we're continuing our discussion of chapter 3 of Observing the Craft by Andrew Hammer, dealing with distractions. And I think last week we ended off with we wanted to talk about the universality of Freemasonry and whether that is actually continued in the concordant and the independent bodies.
Well, he makes a point of it directly. What we talked about in the last show, Steve got a point there, was that the affinity lodges may not be considered universal, and which is, there's a thread in there. But certainly he points out directly that the Knights Templar is not universal, right? Because
you've got you need to be a Trinitarian,
a Christian, I believe. Well, that's the Scottish Rite in England. So there's another element. The Trinitarian was the Scottish Rite in England, right? But not in the U.S. Well, but yeah, in the Templar, you have to declare a faith in Christianity,
right?
Which then directly excludes the idea of universality,
right? So they can't be Masonic.
So how did that? I was going to ask before. When do you think all this? Why and when do you think it all changed? You were saying earlier in the other show, Jarrod, that it's because people wanted more, but Freemasonry was just kind of being born still. Well, I guess it was a couple hundred years old, but was it there us damn Americans that wanted something more, and so they elevated Pike and said, and all these other guys, and said, hey, make us help us find more. I mean, why do you think all this?
Well, okay, so first off, I know Pike didn't create the Scottish Rite from start.
Sure.
But yeah, well, I mean, it's basic human nature to want to be better than, to have something more than someone else has. Right. So I think, and I mean, we know that, then I think that's part of it. That's part of what it is that, you get to your third degree, you sit in the master's chair, and then people kind of want to do more. And then you get and a lot of the old degrees and the rituals that are no longer done were, as I said in the last episode, they were degree factories. They were, give me money, I'll make you, whatever level.
And then
want.
Of course, as they had, 13, 16, 18, 32 degrees. Well, now, once you join Masonry, you think you got to get to that 32nd degree level to be, to complete your journey and go all the way. Right. And I think that is just, like you said, Jarrod, it's a human nature to want to excel and be, especially when you're joining Freemason, you want to be a better man. You want to be the best you can be. Right. So why wouldn't you want to excel to the top of the organization you just joined? But in doing so, all these that completely validates his claim that they're a distraction from, because if you think about it, if you joined Freemasonry and you didn't know about any of the other concordant bodies or other degrees past the third degree, you would focus on yourself and the lessons taught there in the organization you joined. Right. You wouldn't be striving or looking for more, because it wouldn't be dangled as a carrot in front of you.
Nope.
And they were all developed pre-bubble in the 50s, although there was a little bit of a bubble in the 20s and 30s.
When there was one in the early 19th century, there was a huge explosion of fraternal like Freemasonry and other fraternal organizations.
And so do you think it was out of what they felt like was some necessity to have, I think Steve mentioned on the previous show that you take forever to get through the chairs. And so they created other organizations to allow them to have hierarchy and to have organization, and they could go through another set of chairs. And they could be in charge of another because they could never achieve that in the Blue Lodge because there were so many members.
Well, yeah, but most of the concordant bodies require you to go through the chairs and be, well, they used to, didn't they?
Mm-mm.
What are you saying?
Well, it required you to be a past master before you join. No,
Master Mason. I don't think you have to be a past master to join.
I know, but like I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're just people wanting to be better than.
I think you're in there. He talks about, and supposedly the Royal Arch degree is supposed to be a past master's degree.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to be a past master.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever
I think you used to. I actually,
maybe.
I'm trying to remember from my readings, but I think when it first started, you did. Like it was but then that's why they had to create the symbolic past master degree. Because they wanted to let non-past masters in.
As if by magic.
As if by magic, all of a sudden,
it's kind of like you had to be a 32nd before you could be in the shrine, right?
Oh, don't get me started on the shrine.
And so it's interesting. He quotes a past Grand Master of the Knights Templar when he's talking about how the Blue Lodge should only be the way, right? Yeah. I wonder how past this Grand Commander was before he said
it was like 18. Hold on a second, because doesn't he have to find
it? Does an 1890 article, but was he already out as had been past Grand Commander for a while and then realized, oh, all that we did was kind of superfluous and we should have not been excluding others from our faith, from our universality of faith. So I'm just curious, my guess is it wasn't during his term as Grand Commander, and it probably wasn't immediately after. But I'm curious, was he, Grand Commander in 1800, or I'm sorry, it wouldn't have been 90 years later, but 1880 or something, and then a few years later he kind of came to that revelation.
Let me go to the library and I'll see.
I'd just be curious to know how soon after, and was he still revered? I didn't research. I should have researched whether it was, was he the black sheep, so to speak? And when you talk to Templars, they go, "Oh yeah, that Frederick Speed guy. He doesn't know anything, and he's a contrarian to our beliefs or whatever." Is he the one that goes against all their ideas? But Webb kind of says the same thing, and he was the one that mostly created our English ritual. So.
I don't know. That's a good question. It kind of, put it right forward there when he referred to the Scottish Rite with the very best of intention to style itself as the University of Masonry. Yeah. Right. And when guys come into Masonry that are seeking more knowledge, they think it's knowledge, education that they're supposed to be receiving. And of course, they're not really getting it in the Blue Lodge because they're not examining the degrees. And I think in a sense, Blue Lodge may have done this damage to themselves by not focusing on educating the membership about the lessons in the first 3 degrees more diligently or more directly. Right?
I'm going to call BS on that one. Simply because I don't think it's lack of teaching because we've all seen it, especially nowadays, is that the Scottish Rite and the York Rite Masons, as soon as you're made a Master Mason, are handing you an affiliation paper, or an application paper,
and they're saying, "Come learn more here."
Yeah, come learn. They're not. So they're not. Right. We're not even giving new Master Masons the chance to learn these things. That's the problem.
Yeah, not the chance or the tools.
Yeah, right. It's like I agree that there should be more discussion in lodge, but the other problem is that because these are out there and they're touting them as now you've done your 3 degrees, now come learn the real secrets. And that bothers me.
And it's just another social club.
Okay, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting because I often tell seekers, the stories of different times that I've learned life lessons through the memory work, and I often refer to things that I was practicing to do a lecture, and that piece at that time in my life, a piece of that lecture was really applicable to what I was dealing with personally. And, so I learned that through that at that period of time. And of course, though some of those lectures and pieces that I talk about are in the 4th and the 7th degree in Scottish Rite.
Yeah.
And so that, I don't know.
But Andrew Hammer also makes a point that all the information that is contained in the Scottish Rite is available to all of us, like the original text and everything. If we just look for it, you don't have to join the Scottish Rite to find it. Right,
but you got to look for it and find it in the Blue Lodge.
Right? No, you just have to look for and find it. It's not. It doesn't have to be given. Like the point he makes, the point that when I read that passage is that part of the job of us becoming Masons is to seek the information, not have it spoon-fed to us all the time. And that's the problem with the appendant bodies, is that they basically are spoon-feeding more information to you that is not necessary.
Well, I think they're lacking a spoon as well.
Well, yeah, you might be lacking the spoon too, but you know what I mean is that
they're giving you soup with a fork, as far as I'm if you use utensils. You get a little taste, and then you go. Well,
and I mean, okay, so and I'm going to, because I know that Stephen was a member, and you have kids. What about the youth organizations?
Oh, I thought we were going to save that for the next show. No,
we can save it for the next show if we want. I'm just throwing these because we've kind of at least I've kind of hammered down on the York and the Scottish rites, but he taught there's more than just that involved in distracting you from the symbolic lodge,
like the associated and other bodies. Like,
did we ever land on concordant and appendant? Appendant is,
well, he kind of vacillates on the description as well.
Yeah,
and I think there isn't a clear. I think if you ask 10 Masons, you get 12 answers of what the difference between those two are.
But yeah, so those
either of them are neither of them.
Yeah, because
not associative, maybe that's, or not. Whatever word you use isn't going to work.
I guess concordant and appendant, because they're all sort of non-symbolic.
I related it originally to concordant was, it is my definition. Concordant is, carefully we chose words, the Masonic directed, right? So a Scottish Rite and York Rite concordant, because you have to be a Mason to be part of it. Whereas like Eastern Star, Amaranth, all those other ones that have maybe Masons involved, even the youth groups would be appendant.
Yeah, they're sort of a Mason adjacent.
Right. Well, and the youth organizations, well, I mean, they were just started by Masons. I don't see them as being Masonic organizations. I never really have had that opinion that they were a Masonic organization. I knew it was started by a Mason, right, for good reasons, or for for various reasons. But I've always found it interesting that though it's not a Masonic organization, it a lot of things are very similar. But of course, being who started it, makes sense as to why it's very similar, right? The structure.
I hadn't thought about how he talks about we basically thrust the initiatic process onto these youth that have no concept of what that really means.
Right.
Now, are we assuming that the initiatic process for them is supposed to be the same as it is for us? And so I think initiatic process for an adult is much more surreal. It should be a much more surreal experience versus a youth person is just, it's not so much initiatic as it is, you're just joining, right? I suppose the scouts and stuff don't have quite as dramatic of an initiatic process, right?
No,
they stand up there, raise their hand maybe, and
right.
No, it's not. There's memory work, but
Yeah.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
have either of you seen the initiations for DMLA?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I've seen initiations for all of them.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they try to make them solemn, but again, as a youth, as a person, and I think depending, just like lodges, depending on the body that's conducting that and is part of that, they can either be interesting and thoughtful, and they can also be ruckus. I mean, they can not be very very meaningful. But again,
Mhm.
I hadn't thought about too much as there are times, and I think as a young person grows and develops themselves, they begin to understand and then continue to understand some of the importance of what they're going through. But I don't think they would have the same experience as they would as an adult. And so now that makes me think maybe that's why they, like I say, oh, DMLA and Rainbow and Joby's, it's the catalyst for Masonry. It's the future of Masonry. And now I'm thinking, well, maybe they're not only are they tired of it because all the adults bickering and arguing and stuff, but they've already been through this process and they think that's what they're going to get the same thing in Masonry or in their other organization, Eastern Stars, whatever. And it's probably true. They're probably going to get the same lackluster information, a lackluster growth and development. Now, again, I think every organization's different. Some are better than others. And I think it's the interest of the youth or the interest of the person and the teacher, whoever that is. In the case of youth groups, hopefully it's adults teaching and then the youth teaching themselves and then teaching each other at some point, just like it should be in the Blue Lodge, right? You have a mentor and then you are the mentee and eventually you become the mentor, hopefully, and teach that or available to answer questions or to help guide somebody.
Yeah. It's interesting you say it that way because I've often told the story of my opportunity to give back that which I received as a youth, right? By being a chapter dad, in the organization years later, right? And I don't know that did have that it had such a heartfelt impact to me, that it's one of those big memorable moments in my life, right? Both the first experience and the follow-up subsequent experience of being able to give back. So,
And I think potentially, just like they've said in the book, that there's other organizations out there that are help to form the youth. I don't see it as a problem to have a Masonically affiliated youth program, except for what Jarrod's point was. Oh, we can't do that on Thursday night because that's the Jobies, or can't do that on Friday night because that's the DMLA.
Okay, but once again, what is the purpose of Freemasonry? To make
go all
us
the way
better.
Sure,
improve ourselves.
But I would say that there's.
But we don't. Sorry.
I would say there's elements of that in it because we, like Steve just said, I'll bet there probably was elements of himself becoming better by teaching.
I know, but my question is that there already exist youth organizations to join. If that's a path you want to go to make you a better person, we don't need a Masonic affiliated one. There are other organizations already.
But do they teach the same things or the things that we think should
doesn't matter that whether they do or they don't, they teach. And actually, I would argue that probably most of them do. There's church youth groups, there's scouting. Mm-hmm. They all teach a similar. And we don't. Once again, we're not making. We don't. I don't think we're not, because the problem is what if we're creating a youth organization that teaches the same things that we teach, are we just making little Masons? Mm-hmm. Or are we trying to get improved? This is the thing is, and then you start getting into the issue, as you said, David, of, well, once they've gone through everything in DMLA, then what's the point of joining Blue Lodge? It's just the same old, but with older guys. Like the lessons that we teach in Freemasonry in the Symbolic Lodge should be sacred to the Symbolic Lodge, and we shouldn't be trying to spread. We should be trying to be not spread those specific lessons out to everyone. It should be for people you should have to join the lodge to get them. But I don't think that we should not go out. Wow, a lot of double negatives in that. To like going out and providing like to youth groups and stuff like that is good. I just don't think we should be trying to create youth groups that create little Masons.
True, and I don't believe that in starting DMLA that was their purpose, or even that it became a purpose of theirs, because I don't think that's the direction that I got from it. It taught me to be a good person. It taught me to be mindful and considerate. And when they're talking about the 7 cardinal virtues of the DMLA, it's things to live by. Whereas in Masonry, we're here to improve ourselves in everything that's good, amiable, and useful, right? Whereas in DMLA, I was being taught skills that weren't being taught to me at home or anywhere else, and they're life skills. So I think, the youth organizations that were started by the Masons serve a great purpose. And I don't think that they're trying to make little Masons. Nor do I think that it's the feeding ground or gateway into Masonry, because there's a lot of my DMLA brothers that didn't join Masonry after. And I mean, yep, there were several that did. Some stuck it through and are still Masons today, and some didn't. But I don't think that was trying to duplicate itself, right? So I disagree with that statement.
And I'd just like to point out that everything that you said the DMLA does for you, you get out of scouting.
Maybe so, but I don't think there's anything wrong with Masonry starting or the starting of DMLA.
I know, but that's not our purpose. And I'm just saying that's not the purpose of Freemasonry.
I think
true. I agree. It is not the purpose,
and that's why it's a distraction. In that we've set out to men who had sons who wanted to. And I actually disagree. I think that DMLA was started as a feeding ground to get them into to get boys into Masonry.
It wasn't actually.
No,
the history of DMLA was that there were orphan boys hanging around in a lodge neighborhood, and there was a Mason that happened to see them and befriended one of the youth, or the youth befriended him, whatever, and he found out that he was looking. He needed some guidance, and he said he discovered that there was other friends, and mostly because they were orphans from the war, and they realized that there was a lot of men that had passed away and they didn't have dads, and so they kind of rallied up these boys and started. I think it was like 50 or 60. It was a huge first class of DMLA in Missouri. Out of it, they all were orphans essentially, or most of them were orphans.
Yeah,
or had some lack of structure in their family life for sure. So it is kind of a cool basis. It just happened to be a Mason. Could it have been a Lion or Rotarian or some other organization?
Sure,
not in the 20s, but yeah, I mean, because they those didn't start until later. The Lions Club didn't start till 35 or 65 or something. 35, I think it was. But so I don't think they were really designed to be little Masons, and that was probably, I don't know when did scouting start? Was scouting even? I think some of these organizations were around because there weren't other organizations. Scouting, now there are.
Scouting started in the early 20th century, late 19th. I can't remember. It's one of those things where I know that the Girl Guides started in the 1910s, so scouting must have been around before that. Okay. I'm trying to remember Baden-Powell. I'm trying to remember what Baden-Powell fought in one of the wars, the Boer War. Hold on, I'll go to the library and see.
Well, there was a point that I was going to mention. I can't think of what it was.
Founded apparently in 1900. Scouting was apparently founded in 1907.
Okay, so even before DMLA then.
Yeah,
maybe it just hadn't become big enough to become part of that.
I don't know.
Or in a different part of the world.
Yeah, I don't know.
But in the just to close off this chapter, on the last page, I'm just going to read it because it makes sense. The result has been the unfortunate tendency to seek to make masonry in our own image. To an extent, it is human nature to attempt to mold things in this way. Again, it makes us comfortable and demystifies that which takes genuine effort to understand. Yet masonry is not just what anyone wants it to be, and therefore end this chapter with a question that strikes at the heart of what it means to become a Freemason. Do we give into the tacit state of human nature in accepting what is familiar and comfortable? Or do we challenge ourselves to find something more in ourselves and become that which was offered to us in the beginning, something better? If the answer is to be the latter, then it requires our singular focus, dedication, and commitment to the equally singular institution from whence all of this came, that brings us to the pursuit of excellence within that institution. Right.
So if we're supposed to challenge ourselves, if you go back up a couple of pages, he talks about the influence of Grand Lodge on some of the ideas. And one of the things that I had written down the first time I read it, this is a different color ink, was when he talks about if we're not supposed to bring politics and religion and other things into the lodge, and yet at least in the United States, I don't know if you do in Canada, we do Pledge of Allegiance. We have a flag ceremony. Technically in our code, it's optional. Do you post the flag?
We have both flags in our meeting room, but we do not pledge allegiance or do any of that.
Interesting. I don't know exactly when that was added to our ritual. I believe it's relatively new, probably less than 50 years. But yeah, we have a flag ceremony to post the flag, and then generally the Pledge of Allegiance is done immediately following that. So yeah, it was interesting that wasn't supposed to be part of what we are as Masons, our country's origins or whatever.
Right.
Well, there is an argument to be made that it's part of being a good and peaceable citizen.
And he says that. He does say that. We're supposed to be those things. Yeah. But those are outside the lodge. Interesting points he makes.
Yeah.
Those are really outside.
Yeah, because I think you guys and your relationship to your flag is a bit odd. Well, it's just pledging allegiance to the flag all the time.
It's a symbol, just like everything else. It's a symbol.
Well, no, but it's just the amount of times that you pledge allegiance to your flag. It's almost like the flag's got an insecurity problem or something, Man, I'm gonna get I'm just gonna get burnt, aren't I? But in that, no, but then in keeping the like keeping things sort of, I don't want to say non-secular, but
But in all fairness, the United States is very patriotic. In Canada, we don't seem to be as patriotic, and I think that comes more from being made up of people from all over the place.
Oh, we're gonna have a discussion on this one later.
Right. Well, yeah, you can't do it in lodge because I totally disagree with that politics, statement. Right?
So, I totally disagree with that statement.
I think patriotism is individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, but typically you guys do pledge allegiance to your flag, like you get up every morning and brush your teeth, right? And
after breakfast,
right? So, but I mean, it's admirable. Being patriotic and whatnot is very admirable trait. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
But again, he indicates that should happen outside. Yes, we should take those things we've learned and take them out of the lodge. And so, that was what I was going to bring up. We may have to have another show, because I was going to ask you. You had said just about 10 minutes ago that there's lessons we only learn in lodge and shouldn't be taught anywhere else. And I thought, wait a minute, that's not true. We should be able to be taught these things and take these things outside of the lodge that we're taught. I mean, some things are secret, but I mean, isn't that really what we're all about? We're supposed to learn these things and develop ourselves and take ourselves out of the lodge. And
I think what I said was that there are lessons that we're taught in the lodge that we're not supposed to teach outside of the lodge.
maybe
They're supposed to be done in the lodge, and that we're supposed to take the teaching that we've learned and apply it to outside of the lodge.
Fair.
But I'm sure someone's going to rewind this episode and go back and go, no,
I think you're right. I think it was said that way, but I guess I understood it to mean that there's things that we can't take out of the law. Well, yeah. Now I'm not sure exactly, but
okay. What I meant was that there are lessons that we're taught in lodge that are exclusive to us being taught them in lodge, and that if you want to be taught these lessons, you need to come to lodge. That we shouldn't be creating other organizations or taking these lessons outside to others. It's that if you want them, come to our lodge. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. So I guess I was thinking that we couldn't take the ideas that we were taught so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, yeah. Anyway, this was a good chapter. I think we probably could sit and have a whole nother after lodge discussion about this.
Probably.
Yeah.
And go on and on and on about it.
And on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But I think Jared's right. Yeah, you want to learn those things? Come to our lodge, our Blue Lodge.
Yeah, and that we need to stop. And we need to stop telling people that, once you've gotten your third degree, that there's more to know. And
right.
Is that no, there is more to know, but you don't have to leave the lodge to learn it.
And on that note,
I guess on behalf of David and Stephen, myself, and the absent Matthew, thank you for joining us on the Working Tools podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time when we continue our discussion of we're going to move on to chapter 4 of Observing the Craft. Thank you.